We just loaded up the leaderboard page and changed the order by query string value into something which is probably going to be invalid in the database. Now, because there's no error-based injection risk, we got this really friendly error. Well, at least relatively friendly. It's not an internal exception with internal implementation details. So it's telling us that something is wrong. Power KW2 is probably not going to be a legitimate column. Now, what we really want to do in a case like this, before we start probing away at injection risks, is get a bit of a sense of what we think the underlying query might look like. We have to understand what that query looks like, because if we don't get it, then we're not going to know where to inject our attacker's payload. So here's what I'd normally do. I'm going to grab a notepad and pull it over, and I'm going to write out what I would imagine the underlying query looks like. Sometimes this takes a bit of trial and error, but I'm going to speculate as to how I think it's formed. And I reckon it looks like this. Select star from supercar, order by power KW, descending. Descending obviously being what happens when ascending is set to false. And clearly that is the order because we saw the most powerful stuff at the top. Now, the most important thing out of all this is that there is a point in the query that we believe that we can inject. And obviously it's this bit just here, this order by column name. And we know that things go wrong when we try to do something like this. So if we can inject at this point, what could we do? Well, how about this? Let's take something that we already know about the internal implementation of the database and see if it works. So this is where we have to play. And I'll just put this on a new line to make it a little bit clearer. So keeping in mind that we do need to have a syntactically valid SQL query, what can we replace this with to start asking questions about the internal implementation? Well, here's an example. What if we were to try select top 1 password from user profile? Now, we already know that this is a valid structure. And what I'm looking for is I want to see if we actually get a successful response from the web page or if it fails, like what we see here at the moment. So let's copy that out and we'll jump back to the browser and we'll replace power KW2 with that statement. Let's now load this up. So here we go. The page has loaded successfully. It doesn't matter what the actual order is. The important thing is that the underlying query has executed without failure because we no longer have an error message. And again, it doesn't matter that we got a very friendly error message anyway. What that told us was that something was wrong. What this tells us is that nothing is wrong. Let me show you what I mean. If we were to change password to password 2, and there is no column called password 2, let's have a look at what would happen. Here we have an error again. So this is the Boolean-based injection component. We're asking a question. Does this statement execute okay? And we get told either a yes or a no. Now we can keep manipulating that statement and getting yes or no responses. And it's a very binary sort of way of asking the system questions and getting answers. It is, however, also a very laborious way of asking questions. But when we don't have error or union-based injection, this is all we're left with. So we have to start constructing the right questions in order to get the right answers. So with that said, let's move on and start talking about what the right questions are for a Boolean-based injection attack.